Now, it kind of given you an overview of the importance of camp retreat ministry. And I want to celebrate the fact that the Susquehanna Conference really values camp and retreat ministry. I was the national director of camp retreat ministry for 20 years, and so I've seen the differences in how conferences view camp retreat ministry. And this conference really values it. And so it's very, very important for all of us to make sure this ministry goes forward in the best way possible. And so the Camp Retreat Ministry Board has done its work, and they had a very important responsibility that no one else has. And that is to take the time to look at what's the changing landscape and how can this ministry move forward, not only to be continually effective and produce the outcome of discipleship among a wider and wider circle of people, but also how do we do that in a way that works and is sustainable over the long haul and enables us to grow? When I lead a week of camp or I lead a retreat, I'm not responsible for looking at that whole picture. Usually my focus is on that particular week. It's on that particular weekend. Or if I'm leading an activity, or if I happen to be somebody who's doing a worship service at a camp, I'm focused on those pieces. But there needs to be a group who's focused on the whole. And that is the Camp Retreat Ministry Board. So this recommendation comes from that group, no other group. It was initiated by people who were on the board, all of whom are deeply involved in Camp Retreat Ministry. So this recommendation is coming from people who understand it, who value it, who are with you in its importance. This is not from any other reason, any other group. We do have support of other groups, but this was initiated 2 years ago, plus now, by the Camp Retreat Ministry people themselves. So what are the changes? Because this is what affects the future of the ministry. So there are some very big changes in the landscape, and the board has decided certain things need to happen in order to address those changes. First of all, we must align to reach new people. New people in our communities, new people in our churches who have not had the opportunity to participate, but also, as we talked about earlier, communities who have not had access before. So communities of different cultures, different races. And why is this important? It's not just simply an ideal that the Camp Retreat Ministry came up with. There's actually rationale why this is very important. So let me share two things with you. The first one is that the number of children, youth, and young adults has significantly changed in our local churches over a 10-year period. So from 2010 to 2021, and this is based on the research of the journals themselves. So this information comes from the local churches. This is their year-end reports. Right now, our congregations have connections with young people that have dropped by 56% with children. So we have less connection by 56% with children than we did a decade ago. For youth, it's 58% less. For young adults, it's 62% less, based on the church's own reports. And we know that coming out of COVID, we're also still struggling, right, to get back on our feet. And so we're still living within that reality. That has a huge impact on Camp Retreat Ministry, because our major way of promoting the program is through the local churches to the children, youth, and young adults that they have connections with. And when the connections drop by these levels, it has a ripple effect out into the Camp Retreat Ministry, because we really don't have any other strategy in the past except to promote it through local churches. So that landscape has changed dramatically. The second thing that's changing in the state of Pennsylvania is who lives here. So right now, if you're 20 or under in age, 1 out of 3 of you are going to be a person of color. 1 out of every 3 persons under the age of 20 in Pennsylvania right now is a person of color. In large part, we're irrelevant to those neighbors, with a few exceptions. So how is it that we're going to love our neighbor, be in relationship with our neighbor, unless we make some fundamental changes and create new avenues for relationship and connection? And Camp Retreat Ministry could be one of those, because our primary audience is the younger audience and the adults who care about them and families. In central Pennsylvania, I've heard often spoken, well, we don't have a lot of diversity here, so a lot of this doesn't apply to us. And what I want to share is that according to the demographics, that statement is less and less true. For example, 20, 25 years ago, it might have been 1 person out of every 25 persons is a person of color. But if you're age 20 or younger living in central Pennsylvania, it's now 1 out of every 8 persons, soon to be 1 out of every 7 persons. These are our neighbors. These are the people in our community. And so for Camp Retreat Ministry to help congregations meet, create new connections, work together collaboratively to make that happen is an avenue for us to know and to love our neighbors in a different way. And this is an important part of our future. The second piece that the Camp Retreat Ministry is really working on out of these 5 priorities or 4 priorities is to increase the impact of our ministry. And what they mean by that is some weeks of our camp are very, very strong. We're almost a totally volunteer-driven Camp Retreat Ministry. So 1 week, the team may have the time to do all the preparation, and they do a great job, and they're ready, and they're raring to go. And when the kids come, it's a beautiful, well-organized experience based in the core of Christian experience, and also activities that are interesting and fun that make it memorable for the young people. But there's also weeks that aren't so well planned. And so we have this roller coaster ride of experience. And one of the things that's important for our Camp Retreat Ministry program as we grow is to make sure that every week is consistent, that you're going to have this powerful experience that we're offering every single week. And so that means we have to change the way we do our program. Part of that will be increasing training of our volunteers. And the other part of that could be having college students and educators who are off for the summer get trained for a much longer period, 8 to 9 days, and then they're teamed up with volunteers. So this part of increasing our impact is very, very important. In order to accomplish that in this changing landscape, we have to do a couple things. First of all, we need to develop a stronger training program, and we need to make sure our volunteers have access to that program in a different way. Asking everybody to come 1 time a year to a central location doesn't work for everybody. So we have to create a whole new piece. That means we have to have staff who are creating different types of training to make sure they're accessible. As we move forward with growth, we're also going to be reaching people who are meeting us for the first time, right? Either at the local church setting or they're meeting the Camp Retreat Ministry for the first time. Well, they do not have the long connections that many of us do with the United Methodist Church. And so if they have a bad experience, it's going to have a completely different impact on that family, because their meeting it's like first impressions, right? So we have to make sure that we have this kind of consistency and powerful faith-forming experiences for people. The next piece that the board is responsible for and is looking at is, okay, what about the long term? How do we make sure that this ministry is not only around 10 years from now, but this ministry has grown and is stronger? So we need to align our resources to make sure that we can do what needs to be done. And part of that is finances, right? Where do we put our money? Where to have the biggest impact? The second piece is, what about our staff? Because they are a powerful resource. How can we align our staff for growth? So the current changing landscape, which we all need to be aware of related to those two things, is, first of all, our staffs are maxed out. They are completely occupied on running what currently exists, and they have very little to no capacity for the growth, for the development of new programs, for all those pieces that have to be put into place. So we need to reorganize our staffing to free people up so that this work can be done. The second thing is they also need to be developing a greater breadth of opportunity for people who come to our camp retreat centers in terms of the kind of experiences they have access to. Right now, all of our camps are small. When you look on a national level and you compare our camps to other camps, every one of ours is small. When you have small camps, you have very small staffs. And this is one of the challenges. How do we get to another place? And we've been in this place for a while, and now it's getting even more challenging because of the other things that are changing around us. So if I were to choose to send my child to an experience, I would be looking at, this is going to be a faith-forming experience. That's important to me if I'm a Christian parent or a parent of faith. But they're also looking for, how can my child grow and also enjoy this experience so they want to go, right? And so there are all kinds of things we can do to broaden the kind of programmatic opportunities that are available, like challenge courses. We could be doing any number of activities that other camps are not providing. And if we want people to come to us, then we have to be good at this. And we have to have a range of possibility for people, not only for summer camp, to be honest. It's also true of retreats, right? When a youth group or an adult group is choosing a place to go, they're looking not only what are the amenities of that place, but what can you do there? And so if we want to impact people, get them on this path of discipleship, the first thing we have to do is be a place they want to come. Because that's how we have the encounter with them. And we also have to learn to go to people and not just expect them to come. So all of this is happening in the background. So the question is, what's happened in the last 10 years that has changed our situation? First of all, you all know, because you went through it too, we had COVID. Camps were closed for a year. We have never recovered fully from COVID, and most of our churches haven't. So we have a little more than half the number of campers that we had prior to COVID. The second thing is, then on top of that, which was not part of this study, but happened as the study was concluding, disaffiliations. So 140 churches decided to go on a different path. This has impacted us as well. Some of our churches have continued to send campers, but many have not. So we need to find a new way of reaching new people and not expecting that to just kind of flow in somehow. So that requires staff time, attention, new materials, new programs, new resources. All of that is possible. So where are we now? There are markers that are used across camp and retreat ministry about when does a camp or retreat center reach a point where it is not only sustainable, but it has the capacity to grow and to continue to do the improvements and the changes that need to be done. And that number is 800 to 1,000 campers per center. 800 to 1,000 campers, summer campers, week-long campers per center. Or another way to measure it, and this is often used, I've used it for many years as the national director, 5,000 to 6,000 guest days. And for those of you who are not in camping, let me quickly explain the guest day. That's the equivalent of an overnight plus 3 meals. That is the volume of participation that allows you to have the resources necessary, to have the staffing, the improvements, etc. Where are we? Right now, all 4 of our centers together just reach 800 to 1,000 campers. All 4 of our centers together are around that 5,000 to 6,000 mark. That is not going to work. So we now need to look, what are our alternatives? What can we do that would be effective and to move us in the direction of greater sustainability and effectiveness and growth? I would say, just so you're aware, this has nothing to do with the ability of our staff members. In fact, I'm just amazed at how dedicated they are and the things they did to keep us from going into a tailspin financially during this really difficult period. First of all, we had a board that was very proactive. So when they saw COVID coming, we already had plans in place to do a healthy forest plan. And part of the healthy forest plan is to do some logging so that we can diversify the types of trees and plants so we can get greater diversity of animals and creatures in our forest. And that came at a perfect time because the board ramped up. Let's do that because that's something we can do while the camp is closed to keep our ministry moving forward. That produced $200,000. Otherwise, we would have been in debt. So people have been working so hard. The second thing is our staff reduced because they saw they weren't going to have the income to pay all these people, which meant the people who were left worked even harder. And my concern was burnout for them because with small staffs growing even smaller, there's still a host of things that have to be done no matter what size group you have. It still has to be done. And then when you look at the churches of the annual conference, that's the other piece where we've been really blessed that has helped us through this time period. The Susquehanna Conference does care about Camp Retreat Ministry, and I know that because I'm behind the scenes seeing the kind of commitment that you as churches are doing through your shared giving. Shared giving, when I arrived here, we were receiving $120,000 for the program. We received $65,000 for some of the maintenance of our facilities. So you're now up to $185,000. Our insurance is paid. Now you're up to $285,000. They pay a portion of my compensation. They pay the full portion of the Camp Retreat registrars. You all pay for that out of your love for this ministry and support for this ministry. And the conference is our largest donor by far. So the Camp Retreat Ministry Board and myself, we want to say thank you for that. We also realize that the situation is changing. We no longer have the number of churches we had. So the amount of money that's available to the conference to contribute to any of its ministries is diminishing. And Camp Retreat Ministry needs to find a way to grow to the size where it can be more self-sustaining as part of the long-term strength of the ministry and its long-term effectiveness. And so that's what's changing. Last year, $1 million had to be cut out of the conference budget. This year, it's 1.3 million. These are not small numbers. And there's certain things that are very difficult to cut. Like if the insurance company decides this is what it costs, you can't change that number yourself. So what happens is when you look at that full picture and you look at the areas of programmatic ministry areas, Campus Retreat Ministry is one of the largest. And so we have to figure out how we can continue to be supported by the conference, but not perhaps at the same degree. And right now, that means we have to change the way we do Camp Retreat Ministry. Two big factors need to be addressed that are pricey. One is we have to upgrade our facilities. We have some facilities that have been upgraded, but many of our facilities have not. And when you think about people coming, right, that is a factor. What facilities do we have? And then adding these new programs cost money as well, right? And having the staffing to be out there meeting new people, all of those require, right, financial resources. So today's cost for those kind of things is very, very significant.